As the war in Israel gets worse, more communities are coming together.
May we know no more war in our land.
We take you inside tonight's vigil as prayers go out to loved ones overseas. A Baltimore father struggles to keep his son out of trouble.
Drugs, guns, everything.
We make his frustrations on juvenile justice heard. A city school officer faces federal charges for alleged overtime fraud. But who signed his time cards? Fox 45 News Project Baltimore investigates who should be held accountable for the potential waste of your tax dollars. State officials push back on what attributed to the deadly Beltway crash. The statement they made that some are calling insensitive. More and more vehicles stolen off city streets, and many end up in impound lots like this. The uphill battle facing drivers to get their cars back.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
I come to Israel with a single message. You're not alone. You are not alone.
Well, President Biden is returning home from Israel tonight after meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The president made a public statement of support for the country and the people of Israel.
The president also says he'll do whatever it takes to bring U.S. hostages home. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Mary Bubala.
And I'm Kai Jackson. The president's visit comes just one day after a hospital bombing in Gaza killed hundreds.
Palestinian officials say Israel targeted the building, while Israel says it was a misfire by jihadists.
Supporters on both sides are protesting the recent attack. Calls for an end to civilian suffering are coming in from across the world, including here in Maryland. Well, dozens gathered this evening at the Bethel congregation in Pikesville, paying tribute to the lives lost in Israel. Fox 45's Keith Daniels was at tonight's vigil.
He joins us live with a somber message from those in attendance tonight. Keith?
Well, Mary and Kai, they say the news is somber from Israel, but there's joy when they stand together. And events like this one tonight, they say, help them cope. In Pikesville, another show of solidarity for Israel. Members of the Jewish community, not just from Baltimore County, but from across the area, gathering at the Bethel congregation on Park Heights Avenue. In line at the security check,
people are fearful, and it's escalating.
Learning no lessons. What are they thinking? Do they see what's going on? Don't talk. We need to do something now. It's an epidemic. These kids are out of control. There's juvenile reform incentives. These kids ain't learning no lessons.
And a challenge from a father who says he's done all he can.
Take my son for a month. You deal with it. See what I'm going through.
And to make matters worse, earlier this week, the father tried to file an emergency petition to get his son committed to juvenile services. And when he went for his mental health evaluation, the mental health worker, according to the father, said it's not a mental health issue. His son is just a criminal. For now, we're live in Baltimore. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
Vincent, thank you. And Vincent mentioned the teen is under home monitoring from the Department of Juvenile Services. Mayor Brandon Scott has called the program a colossal failure, saying he wants a complete overhaul of the system.
We need a completely new system built from the ground up. The old system that we had didn't work. The systems that we have now clearly need work. Every single aspect of it from the top to the bottom must be looked at.
DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi agreed in part, saying his department needs to improve home monitoring and improve conditions at its facilities.
And we have seen several children under DJS supervision involved in crime this summer. Tristan Brian Jackson, one of the teen charged in the Brooklyn Day mass shooting, was wearing an ankle monitor at the time of the shooting, and a 14-year-old charged in the shooting was also wearing an ankle monitor, according to a police source. Alante Kelly was featured on Maryland's Most Wanted, allegedly involved in a drug trafficking case. Police say Kelly cut off his ankle monitor while in custody and fled from officers. He was captured 3 months later. Then the mother of a 14-year-old in DJS custody came to Fox 45 News in September, saying her daughter was put on home monitoring for stealing cars, but went right back to committing the same crimes.
When she came home, she went out and stole a car that night and been getting arrested since on home detention. But she's been arrested ever since. On home detention, they still won't do nothing. They won't violate her. All we could do is keep making phone calls back and forth while the child is out committing crimes.
And earlier this week, another parent shared her frustration with this system. Michelle Hines' son, Isaiah Carter, was gunned down in Baltimore this past March. She says adults are recruiting children to help them commit crimes since the children won't face serious charges.
When we live in Baltimore, there's so many different outlets and so many different ways for these criminals to get a hold of our children, and they're not slowing down. Why would they? What's working, why fix it? You know, like it's not broke.
Business.
Exactly. The business is our children, and they don't care.
Top prosecutors across the state are taking issue with juvenile justice laws. We heard from more than a dozen states' attorneys who represent 5.4 million people, about 87% of the state's population. They say their hands are tied when it comes to holding young offenders accountable. Baltimore County Police Chief Robert McCullough shared a similar perspective in relation to juvenile car thefts. He says young people who steal cars aren't fearing consequences.
Kids get out of the car, and the minute you stop them and you pull them aside, the first thing they say to you is, "Are you going to call my mother?" Because they know they're not. They know they're underage, and they know they can't get in trouble.
McCullough says car thefts across Baltimore County have nearly tripled over the past year. Those numbers are skyrocketing in the city as well. Baltimore's seen more than 8,900 car thefts this year, on pace to reach 10,000 before the end of November. Now, many of those stolen cars end up in a vast impound lot like this one here, leading to major headaches for drivers trying to get their vehicles back and get insurance to pay, possibly. Fox 45's Amy Simpson gives us an aerial view of the struggle.
A graveyard of cars. Rows and rows of vehicles seen here at the Baltimore City impound lot. The lot sandwiched between Pulaski Highway and 895 in East Baltimore. This week, our drone seeing some cars in rough shape, evidence of a crash, mangled or missing windows. Others just a shell of what they once were. From the sky, seeing piles of tires and even a few boats. Also watching as more cars were towed in. According to Baltimore City's Department of Transportation, 3,076 vehicles sit inside impound right now, and nearly 20% of them, 584 of those vehicles, previously stolen.
It did take multiple days where I had to take hours off in the middle of the day just to take care of something, whether it be paperwork or going to the impound and waiting in line with the whole Baltimore public that was also waiting for their cars. In recent months, some of the region's car theft victims sharing the uphill battle to get back on the road, some speaking about their experience at the Pulaski impound lot. In the impound, the Baltimore City impound lot, if you do visit it, you'll notice that there's like sections specifically for Hyundais and Kias that were smashed, and I'm just lucky that my vehicle wasn't one of those. The city tells Fox 45 News it takes a, quote, median of 14 days for owners to get stolen cars out of impound. And to help expedite their release, the city says it lifted all fees associated with car theft, adding no appointment is needed to retrieve a stolen vehicle. And in a, quote, best case scenario, a stolen car can be released same day with the correct documentation.
I mean, there's no reason why your car should be held hostage for 30 days in the impound zone.
But this Baltimore County woman described a weeks-long ordeal, saying she resorted to paying her thieves 2 speeding tickets to free her car from city impound.
To go online and pay it. $80. And now I have to go to jump through hoops to try to get them to give me my $80 back.
Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, 2 West Baltimore men are in custody after police say they used stolen cars to go on a crime spree in Baltimore County. Police say it started on October 8th when they say the suspects robbed a Royal Farms in Middle River, stealing the ATM along with merchandise and money from the cash register. Then this past Saturday, police say the suspects stole another ATM at a High store in Cockeysville. They say the suspects used 3 stolen vehicles. 2 of them were found in West Baltimore. Now, police identifying those suspects as 23-year-old Caleb Edmonds and 32-year-old Darius Davon Jr. Court records show both suspects have criminal pasts. An arrest warrant shows Edmonds had been wanted in Baltimore County for several counts of armed robbery and carjacking since March of 2022. And records show Davon Jr. has a state and federal criminal record, including a prison sentence for armed robbery. Now, legislation to put tougher penalties in place for repeat violent offenders has been introduced several years in a row in Annapolis, but it never made it to the governor's desk. Fox 45 News has been pressing Governor Moore on whether he'll demand lawmakers take action on that legislation this upcoming year.
Are you demanding the Democrats do that?
I'm going to be working with our legislature to ensure that we can have legislation that will move, make it to my desk, and that I will sign to make sure we're getting and keeping violent offenders off of our streets.
If you want to contact your state lawmakers about public safety, House Speaker Adrian Jones and Senate President Bill Ferguson, 2 of the most powerful lawmakers in Annapolis right now. Phone numbers and email addresses for them are right there on your screen.
Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight. It's a story you saw first on Fox. The state is cited in the Beltway crash that killed 6 construction workers earlier this year. How the state is defending itself and why some say that defense is insensitive and unprofessional. The first endorsement in Baltimore's mayoral race is in. Why one state delegate is now backing Sheila Dixon for mayor and how the campaign trail is shaping up.
A crisp and cool overnight on the way. Temperatures falling well down into the 40s. Jackets out by morning, but no rain chance. That's all going to change by the weekend, though. I'll let you know what the wettest weekend day is in my Weather Authority forecast.
A city schools police officer is facing federal charges connected to collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars in alleged fraudulent overtime. After the break, Project Baltimore investigates who signed off on all those hours.
A Baltimore City school police officer facing federal charges accused of collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent overtime.
Now, Project Baltimore's Chris Papps is asking who signed off on all those hours. And is the FBI investigation into that officer part of a bigger problem?
Mayor, can we just get a second with you?
Project Baltimore has been trying to get answers about how the city spent your tax dollars during the pandemic.
What's your question there?
We know Baltimore City Schools is currently out nearly $500,000. Money that was paid to school police working overtime at COVID testing sites from July 2020 to July 2021. The school system asked to be reimbursed by the city, but more than 3 years later, that money hasn't been paid back. North Avenue will not tell us why. So we went straight to the mayor.
The $500,000 has not been reimbursed. Can you explain why?
So we'll follow up with you, Chris, on that. We know we work with our school system to make sure that everything happens above reproach and that we're making sure that our money is spent the right way. We'll make sure you get to that information so you get to the truth and you don't have to guess.
The truth could be in documents we requested from city schools, but the district will not release them, citing the ongoing investigation into Lawrence Smith, a longtime city schools police officer and Dunbar head football coach.
You want to say something to your players, Coach?
Lawrence Smith last month was arrested by the FBI, charged with 15 felony counts related to alleged tax evasion and fraudulently obtaining more than $215,000 in overtime from 2019 to 2022. Project Baltimore has obtained 857 of Smith's overtime forms, most of them from the same time period. And what we found raises serious questions about how Smith's overtime was approved. When an officer submits overtime hours, they fill out a form like this, which is signed by the supervisor on duty when the work is completed. The form is then approved by a commanding officer. In some cases, that's the same person who signs off twice. Of the 857 overtime forms we have for Smith, most are signed by multiple supervisors. And the supervisor who signed the most, Lieutenant Danina White.
What I love about my job, I've been with the Board of Education for more than 23 years.
This is White from a 2022 video posted by City Schools when she was promoted to lieutenant.
My vision is one with the 21st century model of cultural transparency and accountability to restore and rebuild the highest levels of public trust.
White signed off on 659 of Smith's 857 overtime forms. Lieutenant Alfonso Small signed off on 462. Lieutenant Thomas Shook approved 162. And Sergeant Tracy Johnson signed 110. In analyzing Smith's overtime forms, we found between August and September of 2020, Smith recorded 300 hours of overtime over 6 weeks. If you add that to his normal work week, Smith says he was at work an average of nearly 13 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 42 straight days. A feat he nearly repeated the following year in 2021, when he logged 297 hours of overtime over a 6-week period between June and July. 13 hours of work every day for 42 straight days. That seems like it should raise some red flags. But Smith's overtime forms were approved by his supervisors. Had City Schools just gone to his Facebook page like we did, they would have seen multiple examples where Smith claimed to be working when it appears he was doing something else, like on vacation in Michigan or watching a soccer practice on an athletic field.
Who do you want to talk to?
Anyone who would talk to me.
How are you?
I'm well.
Good. Not right now. Not right now.
This could all be avoided if Dr. Santalisas would just give us 3 minutes. 3 minutes is all I need.
Go to the statement we gave you, because that's why we answered those questions in the statement.
But you don't answer the question.
For more than a year, Project Baltimore has tried to speak with City Schools leadership about the investigation into Smith and the approval process for school police overtime. Should the supervisors who approved the allegedly fraudulent overtime also be held accountable? And is all of this related to nearly $500,000 in school police overtime that Baltimore City has yet to pay back? The school district won't tell us, but the mayor said he'll get us an answer.
We'll contact you, don't worry.
You'll contact us?
Yes, sir, we'll contact you direct.
I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Baltimore City paying millions of dollars in a settlement to 3 men wrongfully convicted decades ago. Still ahead, we hear from the Harlem Park Three.
The Orioles' future is so bright, they need shades. What Brandon Hyde is expecting from spring training.
And if you're thinking ahead to the weekend, there's at least some risk of rain that's coming, especially as we head through the first half of the weekend. So maybe you won't be able to enjoy these fall colors as much as you want to, but look at that, some high color that's north and west of Baltimore. We'd like to thank courtesy Explore Fall for that fall foliage report. And if you're going to be raking some of those leaves, probably your best time second half of the weekend, and especially into next week as winds die down and any rain moves out. I'm going to let you know when rain is going to get here, though. My Weather Authority forecast.
Thank you, Jonathan. And you can enjoy tonight because as we head to break, here's a live look over the Inner Harbor in Baltimore. It looks like a beautiful, nice fall night.
The road to postseason baseball on Fox 45 is sponsored by Johns Hopkins Children's Center.
A rebuild well worth the wait. One that landed the Orioles Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday, and other really talented players. One that helped the team win its first AL East title since 2014, and one that has given Birdland a new sense of hope. The question is, can the O's build off that success? And they're in a really good position to do just that with the guys they have coming back, and others that are rising through the minor league ranks, like Jackson Holliday.
It's a great group. I think they're going to come into spring training extremely hungry. And I think the expectations are going to be even higher, which is what we want. And we're looking forward to embracing those. But I'm just looking forward, I just say goodbye to a bunch of them. I want them to enjoy their offseason as much as they possibly can. And looking forward to them, seeing them in spring, ready to go.
It'll be here before you know it. 3 Orioles have been named Gold Glove Award finalists for their respective positions. That plus the 2 others who were snubbed. That's coming up on the late edition of Sports Unlimited. Guys.
Rocco, thank you. And we are your exclusive home for the 2023 World Series. The Fall Classic begins Friday, October 27th. You can catch all the action right here on Fox 45.
An endorsement for Sheila Dixon, the first in the 2024 mayoral race. Why one state delegate is backing her, and the response from Mayor Brandon Scott.
I'm Christine Frizzell with a closer look at the fog of war. How the messages, whether true or false, can be consequential to all parties involved.
We're following three big stories at 10:30. A state lawmaker who backed Mayor Brandon Scott in 2020 is flipping his support. Why he thinks Sheila Dixon is a better fit to lead Baltimore, and Mayor Scott's response.
A hefty settlement for the Harlem Park 3. Their agreement with Baltimore City after spending decades behind bars on a wrongful conviction.
The state officials are pushing back on the notion that improper signage may have led to the deadly I-695 crash that killed 6 construction workers in March. Fox 45 News obtained the original safety report blaming the state on Monday night in a story you saw first on Fox.
That's right, and Jeff Abel has been closely following the new developments for us. He joins us live with the very latest. Jeff?
Well, state highway officials were quick to respond on Monday when we questioned them about a signage breakdown at that deadly work zone over on the Baltimore Beltway. Well, today they have responded with an even broader response, and it's raising even wider questions. On the Baltimore Beltway, where 6 construction workers lost their lives in March, the work zone was quiet today, but questions about the cause of that deadly crash are growing louder.
There are people who weren't doing their jobs.
The construction team was working inside a median work zone when police say a speeding vehicle plowed through an opening in the work zone, striking and killing all 6 workers. While police blame speed for the crash, an occupational safety and health investigation has slapped the State Highway Administration with what it calls a serious violation. Investigators say traffic control signs were not posted to warn road users that construction vehicles may be transitioning into or out of the work zone, exposing contractors' employees to struck-by hazards.
The whole idea of safety is to warn people, is to give people advance notice of a possible problem ahead.
On Monday, SHA told Fox 45 that the sign was not required and was unrelated to the crash. Today, however, SHA delivered a broader explanation, writing in a statement that the citation issued was related to optional signs alerting drivers to potential construction vehicles entering the roadway. The crash did not involve a construction vehicle, therefore the signs would not have prevented the crash from occurring.
They're saying basically these 6 people would have died regardless. To say that it wouldn't have prevented it is one of the most irresponsible, unprofessional things I've ever heard in response to a multi-fatality on a highway.
Gene Simmers is a retired state highway engineer who questions why it took a state violation before drivers could be warned about the work zone ahead.
You can say your safety is at the top of your list, but if you have a situation like this, obviously it's not being adhered to.
SHA tells us tonight it will not be contesting or appealing this violation. We are live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Jeff, thank you. 2 people are hospitalized after 2 shootings in West Baltimore. Around 3 this afternoon, a man was shot in the 1500 block of Pennsylvania Avenue, according to police. Late last night, there was a shooting on North Stricker Street, which left the man in critical condition. Anyone with information about either of the shootings is asked to call Metro Crime Stoppers.
And Baltimore has seen 222 homicides and more than 500 non-fatal shootings this year, both numbers down from last year. But Baltimore's also seen a rise in youth violence and car thefts. Crime is one of the key issues shaping next fall's mayoral election.
Homicides are down 20%. Shootings are down 10%. That is not the case for many major cities.
I mean, we've got to be aggressive in what we do in a way that is not going to harm anybody, but we have to send a message. People have to be accountable.
Well, now longtime state delegate Sandy Rosenberg is throwing his support behind Sheila Dixon after backing Mayor Brandon Scott in the last election. He is the first elected leader to make an endorsement in the 2024 race. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor shares why Rosenberg is flipping to Dixon's side.
It's my pleasure and honor to be here today to endorse our next mayor, Sheila Dixon.
Today, Delegate Sandy Rosenberg announcing his support for former Mayor Sheila Dixon after previously backing Mayor Brandon Scott back in 2020. Rosenberg citing an efficient and effective working relationship with the city under Dixon's tenure.
You knew that if you had a problem in your community, if my constituents had problems, they would get addressed by our city government.
Collaborations Rosenberg claims have been lacking under the Scott administration.
When my staff calls, it takes too long to get a response. There's no sense of urgency about addressing constituent neighborhood problems.
To name a few in his district, Rosenberg pointing to long-standing traffic congestion and safety concerns along the Falls Road and Northern Parkway intersection, and prolonged postponements for redeveloping the Northwest Park beside Rogers Avenue.
That is the essence of city government, and there's no vision to address the long-term problems as well.
On a broader scale, Rosenberg citing this year's staggering rise in juvenile crime and car thefts. And while homicides are currently down about 17% compared to this time last year, according to a recent Wallet Hub study, Baltimore City's murder rate still graded the 6th worst in the nation.
Quality of life is important. Crime is down, but most people don't feel safe.
This is something, if I was the Scott campaign, I'd be a little worried about today.
Political analyst John Deedy calling Rosenberg's political pull a game changer for Dixon's campaign.
When you have a well-respected delegate who's been in the legislature for a long time saying, based on the situation the city is in, Sheila Dixon is the best person for the job. This is kind of a huge get for her.
The endorsement also coming on the heels of this latest Goucher poll, showing Dixon with a 12-point lead over Scott, and nearly 2/3 of those polled stating this city is headed in the wrong direction. But according to Scott, quote, it's unfortunate Delegate Rosenberg would rather see the city go backwards. Mayor Scott's campaign releasing a statement going on to read in part, quote, Sheila Dixon is right about one thing. Delays in city services span across administrations, especially her own. In Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor.
And you can join us next Tuesday, October 24th, for a town hall focused on public safety and criminal justice. It starts at 7 inside the bilingual Christian Church of Baltimore. Mayoral candidate Sheila Dixon will join a panel of public safety experts to answer your questions about the crime fight in Baltimore. Fox 45 News has reached out to Mayor Scott, inviting him to participate several times, but he has not yet responded. If you can't attend in person, you can watch it on foxbaltimore.com. And that brings us to our question of the day. What should be the main focus of the mayor's administration? Crime, education, taxes, transparency, or all of the above? So far, 61% of the people who voted say all of the above. You can weigh in right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote.
Baltimore Spending Board has approved nearly $50 million in a settlement. In the case of the Harlem Park 3, the men spent a combined 108 years in prison in connection with the murder of a 14-year-old in 1983. Nearly 40 years later, City State's attorney at that time, Marilyn Mosby, reinvestigated the case, and at least 2 eyewitnesses withdrew their testimony. The Harlem Park 3 were released on November 25th of 2019.
Oh man, I've been always dreaming of this for this day. I've been dreaming of this day.
I hate to put it like this, we went through hell. It wasn't easy. You see us out here, we smiling, we happy that we free, but we got a lot to fix. Well, in 2020, the 3 men filed a lawsuit against 2 Baltimore police detectives claiming they coerced fabricated witness statements. Now, police say since the murder happened 4 decades ago, it's hard to prove or disprove those claims, so both sides agreed to the settlement.
I was outraged and saddened by the enormous loss of life yesterday in the hospital in Gaza. Based on the information we've seen to date, it appears the result of an errant rocket fired by a terrorist group in Gaza. President Biden says the rocket that killed hundreds of civilians at a Gaza hospital was fired by Hamas. That's according to U.S. intelligence. It's a sharp pivot from the narrative that's already spread in Palestinian areas and across the globe, claiming Israel is responsible for the attack. National correspondent Christine Frizzell with a closer look at misinformation in a time of war.
No matter who was behind it, the images are gut-wrenching, the tragedy beyond measure. The blast at the El Hali hospital in Gaza, a portrait of the atrocities of war and the fog of war. Israeli Defense Forces denying any involvement and blaming Hamas.
They committed that atrocity. It was their rocket.
That claim now backed up by the U.S. National Security Council and by President Joe Biden.
Data I was shown by my defense.
And yet, when it first happened, this headline appeared in the New York Times. The Associated Press reporting hundreds killed in Israeli airstrike on Gaza City Hospital. And Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib posting on X, Israel just bombed the Baptist hospital, killing 500 Palestinians, blaming President Biden for refusing to, quote, facilitate a ceasefire. Already, the incident has sparked protests all around the world. A summit between President Biden and leaders of Egypt, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority called off. Many on the ground still accusing Israel of lying.
They warned the hospital, the Baptist hospital run by the Anglican Church. They warned them that they should leave and evacuate. And they couldn't do that because they couldn't leave their patients to die. They also destroyed 23 ambulances with their airstrikes.
Experts say the blame game and the muddled messages are as old as the history of war itself.
When looking at messages that you see about information coming from war zones, oftentimes that information is not simply just reporting. That information comes with an agenda.
Professor David Broniatowski says the rapid amplification of all different agendas on social media also plays a role.
It facilitates those quick responses. And oftentimes there is a trade-off between speed and accuracy.
A trade-off now proving consequential in a war some fear is just getting started. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
And as the war rages on in Israel, the FBI is reporting a sharp increase in anti-Semitic hate crimes over the past 2 years in America. New data released Monday shows those crimes jumped 36%. Over the past 10 days, as the war in Israel is going on, those numbers are up 400%.
House Republicans are no closer to choosing a speaker than they were 2 weeks ago. I'm Atrell Nashar on Capitol Hill with a potential Plan B taking shape if they don't pick a winner, and soon.
And a nice quiet morning rush on the way for tomorrow. You're going to need some jackets and some sunglasses. Temperature settling into the 40s, rising through the 50s by 10 a.m. A milder day tomorrow. We got some rain and much cooler weather coming in the 7-day forecast. Let you know when. My Weather Authority forecast coming up.